Welcome to H-Frame, the only comprehensive, totally unofficial guide to vintage Black & Decker Workmates. The website is hframe with a hyphen .weebly.com, where you will find my in-depth documentation, over 60 web pages, over 100 PDF documents, over 500 photographs, and still growing. Subject of this video is the Black & Decker 79-001 Type 1, which was the first Workmate made in North America for the United States and Canadian markets from October 1974 to April 1975. The Type 1 is somewhat hard to find today, making up very roughly 4 to 5% of the 79-001s out there. It is, however, more common than the Type 3, Type 5, and Type 9. Since Type 1 was the beginning of the Workmate for North America, I will use this video to describe both the similarities it has with the later 79-001s as well as the differences. If you want to learn about the 79-001 in general, this is the best place to start. You should find this useful. The Type 1 shares no parts with the Type E that preceded it. It does keep the signature cast aluminum H-frames, but even they are a slightly different casting from those on the Type E. The major feature that makes the Type 1 easily distinguishable from the later types is the unpainted steel frame. All of the major steel parts are plated, probably with cadmium, giving it a quite shiny appearance. As a result, the Type 1 weighs over 33 pounds, outweighing the Type E by more than 8 pounds, or an increase of 1/3. The large label on the top of the jaw has the model number, 79001, but no type number. The Type 1 is unique among 79001s for not being marked with the type number anywhere. This appears to be because at the time, Black & Decker had no expectation of producing different types that they would have to keep track of. You can find a blog post at my website that expands on this topic. A second label says RD 1972 Hickman Designs Limited, where RD stands for Registered Design, a designation from UK intellectual property law. And of course, Hickman Designs refers to the company owned by Ron Hickman, the inventor of the Workmate. Type 1 has the same 10 peg holes per jaw as the Type E, but there are a couple of changes. Most visibly, the steel liners for the holes were eliminated, never to return. In addition, the holes are smaller, reduced from 20 millimeters to 3/4 of an inch. The Type 1 is the only Workmate with these smaller holes. Every Workmate made worldwide since then has 20 millimeter holes. You can see here two different pegs that don't look very different at all. The one on the left here is the 3/4 inch one for the Type 1, which can be inserted into the hole. If you try one of the 20 millimeter pegs, you could try as hard as you want, and all you will do is either damage or break something trying to get it in one of the holes. If you have a Type 1 and the 3/4 inch pegs are missing, you can't just replace them with the ones used on other Workmates because they won't fit. At my website, I have a suggestion for a 3/4 inch replacement that's readily available. The wooden jaws attached to the frame using rectangular blocks of aluminum a feature shared with the types 3 and 5 and similar to the type 9. To attach the jaws to the mounting blocks, each jaw on the type 1 has 2 additional 7/16 inch diameter holes near both ends with threaded inserts that connect to bolts that come up from below. The type 1 is the only 79001 with 2 vertical V-grooves in each jaw for clamping tubular objects. The 4 V-grooves are positioned in pairs so that each one has another one opposite it on the other jaw, forming a diamond-shaped opening. Other types have only 1 vertical V-groove per jaw positioned opposite a non-grooved section of the other jaw. The jaw is opened to a maximum of 4 inches, just a little less than on the type E. The opening is controlled by this slot here. The pivot nut for the rear jaw travels in the slot and it stops when it reaches the end of the slot. This is a much more reliable stop than what was used on the type E. On the type 4, Black & Decker lengthened the slot and the vise screw, increasing the maximum opening to 5.5 inches for the type 4 and later types. The footrest has 4 stamped-in ribs, similar to the type E, but with different spacing and style. This is another feature that would change before too long down to a narrower step with only 3 ribs. I mentioned a slight change in the H-frames on the Type 1. This shoulder right here is a distinct right angle on the Type 1, contrasting with a curved shoulder found at that point on the Type E. The vise knobs and swivel pegs changed from blue plastic on the Type E to black and stayed that way for all subsequent 79001s. The lettering on the H-frames also changed from blue to black. The core of the vise knob changed from steel on the Type E to aluminum on the Type 1. And the B and D logo that was cast into the handle on the Type E was eliminated, unfortunately. Many people have wondered if the material used for the jaws is helpful in determining what type a workmate is. The answer is generally no. Black & Decker alternated frequently between different types of engineered wood and finishes for the jaws. However, interestingly, there does appear to be a clear pattern for the Type 1. The first half of production, made in 1974, used 13-ply plywood, while the last half, made in 1975, like the one I have here, used 9-ply. The pivot nut, which you can just see underneath here, is the component that allows the jaws to grip non-parallel surfaces or objects. On the Type 1, it is a 2-piece design made of aluminum. This was changed to a single plastic piece on the Type 4. The Dual layer jaws are formed by adding a second strip of plywood along the bottom edge where the two jaws meet each other, providing a larger clamping surface. The jaws were reduced to a single layer on the Type 6. Let me show you a little of the redesigned mechanism that allows the Type 1 to fold and unfold. I have the top propped up with a stick right now to keep it in an intermediate position that shows the mechanism. First, I'll talk about a part of the design that is found only on the Type 1 because it changed again in 6 months when the Type 2 came out. The side stays are the long, narrow metal pieces that hold the Workmate upright in its unfolded position. The upper ends of the side stays slide in slots in the upper frame pieces as the Workmate is raised or lowered. You can notice two things on the Type 1 about the side stays. First, both the upper and lower ends of the side stays on the Type 1 are secured with screws. You can't quite see the screw at the upper end in this view, but believe me, it is there coming in from the other side. Second, the slots for the side stays are shaped somewhat like a hockey stick, coming down, bending, and with the handle end of the stick pointing toward the rear of the Workmate. Starting with the Type 2, these screws at the upper end were eliminated to save on assembly time, replaced by a male keyhole connector on the side stay, and this also required a change to the shape of the slot. Next, let's look at another part of the design that was new with the Type 1, but which continued pretty much unchanged until the Type 9. Starting with the Type 1, the Workmate uses two separate latches of different designs, one to latch it in the folded position, the other to latch it in the upright position. The simpler of the two consists of a piece of stamped steel that forms a button with a couple of hooks on the bottom end, and it is riveted to a small piece of spring steel that you can't quite see and which attaches to the frame itself. When the Workmate is fully folded, in other words, the upper part is all the way down, the hooks engage with a lip on the lower frame to hold it all closed. When you want to open the Workmate, you press inward on the button, disengaging the hooks from the lower frame. The more complex latch at the front is under tension from a coil spring, which you can see right here. This makes it engage with the upper end of the side stay to lock the Workmate in the upright position. That's when the side stay has moved all the way up into this end of the hockey stick. To unlock it from that upper position, you pull on the lever for the latch that releases the top end of the side stay so the Workmate can be folded. And this brings us to a mostly hidden feature of the Type 1 that I just love from a design perspective: the cap that is found at the pivot point of that front latch. All that was needed at this pivot was some ordinary flat piece of metal, and that's what you find starting with the Type 2. Instead, on the Type 1 only, a designer chose to use this wonderful domed cap that looks just really classy. It's a completely unnecessary aesthetic touch and my favorite little noticed feature on any Workmate. Now I'll demonstrate how the folding and unfolding of the Type 1 works. It is somewhat different from the Type E because of the change in the mechanism. When the Workmate is upright and you want to fold it, first thing you do is tip it toward yourself, reach down, fold rear legs underneath until they latch, let the rear side down, with front, fold the front legs under. So the Workmate is now at its sawhorse height. Then you reach down, take hold of the levers that I showed you earlier that are just behind the front vice knobs. You pull both of them forward towards you, lift the top of the Workmate up to disengage it, and then let it down under its own weight until it latches in the lower position. Then you can stand the Workmate up into its normal storage position, and you can also hang it on the wall this way if you want to. When you want to unfold it, do the reverse, set it down flat on the floor. You have to reach down, find the buttons that I pointed out earlier on the sides that latch it closed, press them inward, lift the top up. The lower part will stay down by its own weight. It does sometimes take quite a strong press on those latches to get them to release. Tip it backwards, unlatch the front legs toward you, tip the Workmate forward, and unlatch the rear legs. And now it is in its full workbench height. With the Workmate upside down, we can see more. The Type 1 saw the appearance of what I call the Brockville production codes, the 4 to 8 character codes telling us the date of manufacture. On the Type 1, the code has only 4 digits, unlike the longer codes on later types. The first digit tells the year, the next 2 digits tell the week within the year, and the 4th digit tells the day within the week. 5101 on this Workmate tells us it was made on Monday, March 3rd, 1975. These codes had mystified owners for 40 years. My discovery of their meaning enabled a whole new level of detail in documenting early Workmates from the Brockville factory. I have an entire web page devoted to the Brockville production codes at my website. All 8 feet on the Type 1 are the screw-in adjustable style with a cone-like shape, slightly different from the cone-like shape on the Type E. The rubber portion, if I can get this in focus, the rubber portion of the foot is in 2 pieces with a textured disc-shaped insert glued into the bottom of the cone. A lot of stress can be put on the foot and the glue deteriorates with time, so the inserts often fall out and are missing. The studs on the feet change to an imperial thread, 5/16 by 18. The 79001 continued with 8 adjustable feet through the Type 3. Unlike the Type E, all 4 folding legs are identical, mounted on hinges, so that When viewed from above, they extend outwards at 45 degrees to the body of the Workmate. This means that they tend to get in your way no matter which side of the Workmate you are working from. Even after decades of using Workmates, I still occasionally trip on a leg. The legs no longer have struts like those on the Type E, but instead lock in the folded or extended position using spring clips. The innermost clip, which holds the leg in the folded position, it has the shape of a half circle. The outer clip, which holds the leg in the extended position, has a couple of bends in it. It's not the smooth curve that the inner one is. With use, these clips can get bent so that they no longer work properly. There's more often a problem with the inner half circle clip. This problem is reduced if you keep the sliding surface of each clip lubricated. I use a product called Slip It Sliding Compound, but there's other options that will work. During production of the Type 2 and then again on the Type 4, Black & Decker changed the shape of these clips to make them less susceptible to damage, and then eliminated them entirely during production of the Type 6. If you have one of these half circle clips that is bent out of shape and isn't working anymore, I have a page on my website with advice about how that can be fixed. That is it for my video about the Workmate 79001 Type 1. Please be sure to visit my website, hframe.weebly.com, where you will find an amazing amount of information about Type 1 and every other vintage Workmate. Visitors to my site are typically astounded when they see the amount of information I have compiled about this. Thank you for visiting, and I hope you come back and look at other videos.